So now we are starting our next session. So that we have the privilege to invite our next session moderator. So it's my pleasure to invite all the panelists and moderator for the next session, which is about space-based biomanufacturing, the next industrial revolution. I request to please join our moderator, Dr. Addanki Vamsi Krishna, Scientist, Department of Biotechnology. Please start the session and stage is yours, sir. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I welcome you to this afternoon session on space biomanufacturing. I invite Dr. Narayanan on the stage, please. Dr. Narayanan. Then George Weinman, kindly come out to the stage, please. Kindly be seated. And Rahul, followed by Dr. Pandey. If you can kindly be seated, we can start the session, please. No? Yeah. Yeah, giving a brief introduction, I am from the Department of Biotechnology, Government of India. So, I mean, we have a small program on space biomanufacturing, and we have recently started a collaboration with ISRO. So I'm Dr. Vamsi Krishna, and we have a list of distinguished panelists. George Weinman, he is a financier. Then Rahul, I mean, he is in the space sector in the startups. Dr. Narayanan, he is a very senior figure in the pharma sector. And Dr. Pandey is a very budding entrepreneur. I mean, he is going into deep space explorations and all that. So, I mean, before we start the actual panel discussion, I would like to say a few words. So, our department, we got sanctioned a new policy, Bio3 policy for fostering high performance biomanufacturing by the Union Cabinet in the month of August 2024. So, there are 6 verticals in this biomanufacturing sector. Out of the 6 verticals, one of the vertical is futuristic space research. So, we are into space biomanufacturing and biotechnology in a very small way. So, to take this forward, we had officially signed an MOU with ISRO for collaboration in space biotechnology, space like biology, space biomanufacturing, and bioastronautics now. So, I mean, apart from this, I mean, you might have heard about the AGEM 4 mission. So, out of the 7 experiments, 3 experiments are from DBT institutions, which are going to be implemented by Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla in a couple of days' time. And coming to the space biomanufacturing, this is a new area. I mean, a lot of research has been gone, especially through the ISS, from international groups, especially US and Russia. A couple of things which I would like to mention. There are a lot of opportunities for the pharma industry because of the conditions which are offered by the microgravity. It is very easy to make organs in space microgravity. And second thing is the protein crystals, I mean, they are made better in the space conditions where you can get higher resolution crystals which will aid in the drug discovery. And other thing is, I mean, when you talk about the monoclonal antibodies, I mean, you have to give repeated IV infusions. So they can be made into dense crystals in space, which can be made into subcutaneous formulations. So that is another opportunity. There are a lot of things, I mean, a lot of challenges when we venture into space, like the distance from Earth, a continuous source of nutrients are required, and how do you sustain in space, and how do you sustain microgravity, how do you sustain the radiation. So with this, I mean, I start the panel discussion. I will start with Dr. Narayanan. Dr. Narayanan is an expert in the pharmacology space. With a brief introduction. Yeah, Dr. Narayanan is a senior pharmaceutical industry expert with extensive experience in R&D, policy innovation. He is at the Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance. He works to advance quality standards and foster collaboration across the sector. So, Dr. Narayanan, first question to you. I mean, how excited are you to venture into the space sector? I mean, we had a discussion, pre-discussion before we came to the panel. I mean, what are the, I mean, how ready is the pharma industry to get into new sectors?
So, first of all, thank you for inviting me to be part of this panel. Like Vamsi said, I represent an organization called the Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance, which is a consortium of the top 23 Indian pharma companies. In terms of the impact that the IPA has, the companies contribute almost 85% of the R&D budget from the pharma companies and almost 65% of the exports that happen from the country. So it's a very impactful organization, and the players who are there are some of the largest Indian pharma players. So, as with any new technology that comes in, there are teething troubles, but the way the pharma industry is looking at space is one of opportunity. I would say that the IPA member companies are definitely excited about doing research in space, especially with the launch of some of the drugs like Keytruda in the Indian market, which have been, I would say, poster child for protein crystallization that Vamsi was mentioning, and also for the sales figures that that product has garnered. It's one of the largest selling drugs in the world today. There is a lot of interest on understanding how space research could actually help improve the quality of medicines that we make. Most of you would have heard the term that India is the pharmacy of the world. And when COVID happened, we supplied the largest number of vaccines to the world. We supplied chloroquine and every other drug that the world was looking for, including remdesivir. So the move from being a generics player to an innovation player is something that the Indian pharma industry is doing at a very rapid pace today. As part of the IPA member companies, we have a vision that we need to have at least 100 drugs from India by 100 years of independence. Today we are at a handful of drugs that have been innovated by India, which are available mostly in India, very few across the world. If we want to change this vision and make it a reality that we will have 100 drugs coming from India by 100 years of independence, I think space research is going to play a very major role in how we do this. I believe that at least 10 of those will be drugs which are discovered based on technologies that are used in space, and how the pharma industry from India utilizes the technologies that are being built around microgravity research, around space station research, whatever is being done, around the stem cell research, around the antibody production research. So I think there's a lot of work that channels very well into the goals of the Indian pharmaceutical industry in general. So I think the pharma industry as such is very excited about this. They are just beginning to learn about the utility of space research for them. I think there's a significant need for some of this crosstalk to happen for the pharma industry to get even more excited and actually start investing in space research or pharmaceutical research in space.
I think it's exciting to hear from you, Dr. Narayanan. I mean, that you're excited that the pharma industry is going to put in efforts in this space area. And also you're saying, I mean, your target is 100 drugs by, the 100 years of Indian independence. So a lot of, space is there. Approach, you can use the especially the protein crystal route to go on for a quicker drug discovery process. So my next panelist is Dr. Siddharth Pandey. He's the founder of Protoplane. So what I gathered is, he's a, aerospace engineer by training, and then he ventured into microgravity experiments, and he had a PhD in NASA. So he is the founder of the Protoplast, which is a startup. It's a deep tech space company focusing on sustainable space exploration and planetary technologies. He's an accomplished aerospace engineer and educator. He is passionate about nurturing space innovation and entrepreneurship. So the first question to Dr. Pandey is, how is Protoplane? I took it from your website, Dr. Pandey. How is Protoplane working to achieve its vision of empowering scientists, students, and storytellers to share knowledge and drive discoveries in climate action and space exploration?
Thank you, Vamsi sir. Honored to be on this panel. I also feel this is one of very few discussions on this topic taking place in the country, so very honored and excited to be part. We actually had a little discussion before we got here, and it's great to see this. I had the opportunity to work at NASA for a few years and build hardware for biological experiments that went to the International Space Station. I've also been involved with, as an engineer, working with astrobiologists, so people who are scientists looking for signs of life. They venture out into places on our planet called analogs, where they look for the existing microbes, and they try to understand how they are surviving in harsh conditions on our planet, and from there take learnings and develop payloads. So as a hardware developer, as a person contributing to research, I've got the opportunity to work in India. I was heading the Center of Excellence in Astrobiology at Amity University, Mumbai for 3 years. We flew a biological experiment as part of ISRO's POEM program. We also started the first masters in astrobiology in the country. And again, going back to NASA to get some more experience, I spent about 11 to 12 years in and out of the Indian space ecosystem. And I realized that there is a gap, very clear gap that exists in how do you pass on the knowledge and the training to an environment which is not either willing to take it or is not in a place to take it at this point. It's too early for them to impart this information. So Protoplane came into being to essentially, we are an amalgamation of about 30 plus experts. We've divided our efforts into microgravity and analogs. And when it comes to microgravity right now, we are formally working with the Human Spaceflight Center in Bangalore into helping assess the immediate requirements in terms of what sort of infrastructure should be put in place on Earth, at ISRO campuses, facilities. What is the current need of the hour of the academic institutions? And they all have different level of readiness. So we already have some institutions which are flying payloads, which is great, but there's tens and thousands of engineering colleges, there's thousands of universities, there's so much talent that is there. How do we tap into that? And certainly it takes a lot of effort to be able to reach everywhere. So as Protoplane, to summarize, we are trying to accelerate the preparedness of the ecosystem because the opportunities are coming very quickly. And people are asking the universities for payloads. They're asking some very mature questions. But what is needed right now is to work closely with universities and to work closely with industry from other sectors and help them understand how they can leverage space, how they can be a part of this, and motivate them and find ways to support them to get into that sphere. So we are playing that facilitator role with the backing of some subject matter experts as part of Protoplane. And in microgravity right now, we are essentially playing the role of trying to understand what kind of targeted workshops we can hold, what closed room meetings can be held, how can we work with the different layers of universities in the country. And from the analog perspective, we are mainly working with ISRO to test certain technologies in the high altitude regions. And I have a talk later today that talks more about analogs. But particularly, yes, microgravity and analogs are two areas where we are focusing our energies on.
Yeah, Dr. Pandey, very exciting, things you are going to do with the Protoplane. And excited to hear that, you are going to educate the people, the students, the universities also, to make them future ready in this new area. Then I move on to Mr. Rahul. I mean, he is a budding entrepreneur. He is a part of RSAT Labs. So he leads the business development of RSAT Labs, a space tech company providing satellite services and AI-driven analytics. He brings expertise in fostering collaborations and creating growth opportunities across the space and satellite sectors. Dr. Rahul, we have been interacting with you for the past couple of years, and I mean, what I believe is, I mean, there are only few startups which are into the biotech space. So, I mean, what do you think, I mean, to take the next step, what are the, I mean, things you are going to do, and are you going to develop any technology, or would you like to be as a service provider? I mean, you can put more thought on that.
Thank you, Vamsi sir, for this question, and thank you for SIA-INDIA for this opportunity. And glad to be here in SIA-INDIA Space Biology conferences, where like it's been very difficult to like set up these kind of conferences because on microgravity, because it's still budding in India. So as RSAT or RSAT is a space biotech company working satellites for microgravity research, like we have done 2 suborbital flights from Sweden, working on different like cell culture, drug double emulsion experiments, and even analytical experiments on biology. Yes, like the majorly like what happens as a startup is like we go on like finding the customers who wants to do microgravity experiments, and at the beginning the most companies would start as a service-based company, saying that like we take the problem statement, we design the experiment like instrumentations using microfluidic technology or lab on chip systems, which is very miniaturized to take the samples to space, automate it, and get the give a live streaming data to the customers and get the samples back. That is very easy for any startups to do that. So what eventually happens is like after 1 or 2 iterations of sending different samples to space, we'll get all the data points. Like think that, for example, if it is a cell culture or a protein crystallization, we'll get different data points, like how the samples should be stored, what are the criterias, what are the sensors we need to be fitted in to absorb or get all the data what customer is requiring. So at that point, we'll have all data points to make a product where it can be a particular product only for protein crystallization. It would not be a lab on chip or like microfluidic systems. It need not to be go in that way. Then like it can be compromised into a 3D printed product, where it particularly can focus on protein crystallization or tissue culture and things. And now we have done, as I told, we have done 2 suborbital flights, and we are planning our ISS mission in 2026, February, tentatively. And like what happens is like now we are giving, as we are nurturing in the industries and educating the ecosystem of universities here everywhere. So we are giving the opportunity to university to experience space, experience microgravity through a cell bank and a seed bank kind of ideas, where we'll give them a section, a small section in the satellites to keep their a certain ml of cells or certain volume of cells, where it will be exposed to microgravity, and we will give them the raw material so they can explore like how we can do or how space or microgravity is affecting that cells and see in a different dimensions altogether. So come up with the new innovation ideas. That is how we are trying to say like how microgravity is being useful, or we are going to pharma industries, taking some problem statement from them, like what the pain point that they are facing. We are finding it such problem statement with the universities and giving them ideas. These are the problem statement where pharma industries are feeling difficult. Like if you have any ideas on that, on using space microgravity or extreme conditions, if you could find some ideas, you can do this, and we are providing you the opportunity to reach space. From that, like even now, after these 2 missions, now we are thinking to build our own bioreactors on a larger scale, where it eventually can build bigger products or like a culturing, like large scale culturing for pharma industries that we are working on. Yeah.
So, I mean, a follow-up question to you, Rahul. Thank you so much. I mean, you're talking about the bioreactor. Have you identified any suitable microbes to be used in those bioreactors? No?
Currently, we are like still in ideation stage of like speaking with many pharma industries and understanding like what is their requirement at what point. Now we were working on certain enzymes where it can be created to certain seed crystals, where it can be used by pharma industries in certain processes of theirs where, because like when we go to pharma industries and we speak about space research, space biology or microgravity research, the first question is at what quantity you can produce in space. Like how can you get a large quantity from space, or how can you take this large quantity of samples to space, where that would be like even like it's not easy to convince them like I'll take a gallons of formulations to space and produce it in space and get it to you, even that doesn't make sense. But when it comes for seed crystals, that is where they can produce it in a large quantity later. So that is how we are trying to evolve, and also we are speaking with certain large institutes on like how the bioreactors to be made, and we have got one problem statement with insulin making company where they are we are brainstorming with them how our bioreactor will be helpful for them to their large scale insulin production, or like taking a Ketroda as an example, how that seed crystals can be made it as intravenous or like as a form of injection.
Thank you, Rahul. I mean, more questions will follow in the next session, Rahul.
Yes.
So coming to our next panelist, George Weinman. I mean, he is a managing director of V Capital, a US-based family office, and of Challenge Aerospace, a merchant banking firm. Previously, he was at the Blue Horizon as head, had leading roles leading the business design functions for the Space Systems Development Division, enterprise development for the Orbital Reef Commercial Space Station. Mr. George also was a founder and CEO of Mega Maldives Airlines, a pioneering flag carrier that accomplished a number of significant aeropolitical firsts. George has a BS in Aerospace Engineering from the University of Virginia, an MBA with high distinction from University of Michigan, Ross School of Business. He is an International Space University SSP program and Phillips Academy graduate and private pilot. So, George, I mean, the first question to you is, I mean, we have been talking a lot about the microgravity-based experiments, and these are very high-value experiments and high-risk experiments also. So, what are the economics involved in these experiments? What are the successes you feel, I mean, which India can, I mean, look ahead and then venture into this space? And then, what are the pitfalls? I mean, what are the like takeaways from the historically on the ISS, on the experiments on the ISS?
So thank you, and I'm very excited to be here because I think this is one of the most exciting areas of opportunity for India in space today. There's lots going on in lots of other fields, telecommunications and earth sensing, but there's huge competition across the globe in all of those other fields. Microgravity research, in particular, biopharmaceutical research in microgravity, is at the very beginning stages of what is possible, but has so much huge potential to affect life on Earth in a very positive way that I think this is a really unique and interesting time to be alive, and I hope to see India really take a leadership role in this going forward. The challenge we have is, thanks to a lot of research by institutions all around the world on the International Space Station and in other forums, we now know a lot about the science of microgravity. Basically, all the sciences we do on Earth can be done in space, but with the deletion or variation of gravity as a variable, which we can't do on Earth. And that is incredibly powerful. If you think about on Earth, all the physics, all the science, all the chemistry, all the biology, we can really only adjust temperature, pressure, and how much we mix things. That's basically all the variables we've got. But in space, we can adjust gravity, and we can adjust radiation. Well, radiation's another factor, but we have so much more things we can do. The entire science of how things work can vary once we move into space. The challenge is, how do we make that accessible? And so today, going to space has two problems in economics. The first is the hardware is still expensive. And the second is the time is an expense. So we all know the phrase time is money. But if you're in the fast-moving material science industries and the fast-moving biopharmaceutical industries, waiting 6 months to a year to 18 months between experimental runs is just a non-starter. It won't suffice. So as an investor, one of the things that I'm looking at is, now that we have reusable rocket technology, we have transporter missions going up on a regular basis, PSLV third stage as a vehicle that can be routinely used. That's a first couple of good steps in increasing accessibility of getting to space. But we also be able to have accessibility in terms of what we do in space. And so there are a number of companies now around the world, including here in India, that are starting to build the physical platforms, which need not be very big. We're talking small sat size, the size of this table, that can host the scientific payloads cost effectively and reliably. And then what's going to be really exciting is bring them back to Earth. So return capsules are now being developed by companies in at least 3 or 4 different countries. No one has a lead yet at the moment. And I think the ability to go to space and come back without having to use a space station. Space stations are fantastic. They're great for research. They're, astronauts give you a lot of flexibility, but they're extremely expensive, and they will be for a while. Commercial free flyers and the ability to access them, to do onboard edge computing, to do telecommunications download of the experiments and remote manipulation of those experiments are going to dramatically increase the accessibility and lower the cost, both in terms of time and in terms of actual absolute cost. Really, the point is to get to where access to space and doing research in space is really no different than going to the lab in the next city over. So we were talking about this earlier. If I can use this example, I'm going to use 2 cities that I'm a little bit more familiar with than the one we used in an example earlier. If you're in Mumbai and you're a researcher, biopharma, material science, whatever it is, and there's an opportunity to use a lab facility in Pune. Well, you just put it on a truck and go over there. You call them up and say, hey, I want you to do these set of experiments, and then I want you to send the results over. I'll come pick them up on Tuesday. It's that easy. Space is not that easy today, but it can be. The distance between Mumbai and Pune is really not much difference than the distance between here we are on Delhi and space right above us. It's a couple 100 kilometers. We just need to make that as accessible, and that is in fact happening now, so that we're going to be able to have all of these institutions that specialize in fantastic research capabilities who are not space institutions are going to be able to access space on a routine basis. And so that's what I think is really exciting from an investment point of view.
Yep, thank you, George. You're saying, I agree with you. Accessibility is a big issue, especially, even in India only, ISRO has got the capability to send payloads or, get in touch with NASA and send a few experiments there. And, I agree with you totally. Then, coming to the CubeSats, you are going to say that this is going to be the future in the coming years where we would be doing a lot of microgravity-based experiments. So essentially, these CubeSats will be totally automatically controlled, and how do they do the experiments inside the CubeSats? Are you going to use some robotics there, or it's AI-based, right?
Yeah, so I think we've learned a lot about miniaturization of satellite technology, and so there's really 3 different problems that need to be solved, and I think you're going to see different firms and different institutions solve different parts of the problem. So the first part is, well, the 4 parts, launch. Well, other guys are doing launch, and we're going to see a lot of innovation to lower the cost of launch, which will benefit everybody. But with regards to the research facilities, first you need the actual in-space platform. So the CubeSat that will have the ability to free fly, maneuver, host the payload for anywhere from a few hours to a few months. And I think that's one of the key capabilities is that right now you go to the International Space Station and even future commercial space stations, you go on the schedule that they tell you can go.
So you say, these CubeSats, they will be ideal for the material science experiments because they don't require these temperature conditions or humidity.
Right. So the CubeSats will then, the second problem is the experimental facility inside the satellite.
Yeah.
So just like we have a whole payload industry that develops optical sensors and telecommunications waveguides and all that kind of stuff, you're going to have to develop an industry, and I think this is where Rahul is becoming specialized, of what do you put in the box? What's the experiment, and how do you institutionalize or make those experiments capabilities routine and accessible? Just like contract research organizations on India have a whole suite of tools, and so somebody in Boston calls up and says, I want to run this experiment. they have all the standardized tools and systems and hardware to do that. We need that for in-space research. And then the third part is, of course, autonomy, remote manipulation, communications. Those are all complementary technologies that we now have in space compute that will allow those satellites to be more effective. And then the final piece is you got to get it back. So reentry capsules, being able to maneuver those reentry capsules to a precise landing so that it lands, you pull your experiment out, you put it on a truck or an airplane, and it's in your lab within 24 hours. And this is not science fiction. This is, we have the ability to do this today. What we're now organizing are the business models, the investment, and I'll call it the specialization of each of these products to make this accessible and grow.
Thank you, George. Thank you. Going to the next question to Dr. Pandey. I mean, as you are aware, I mean, a lot of countries, especially US, they are venturing into the space for deep. I mean, they want to go back to Moon by 2027 and to Mars by 2030s. So for making these experiments successful, we need some analog missions now. I think Dr. Pandey, I mean, he is pioneering in such analog missions. He is in collaboration with ISRO, the Human Spaceflight Program. I mean, I would like to request Dr. Pandey to shed more light on those analog missions now.
Thank you so much, sir. I think broadly speaking, there is a need of the hour to train both humans and systems. And everything starts in the lab. You start doing your lab experiments. You build computational models to do simulations. There's an aspect of analogs which is important, just for the clarity of discussion here. Analogs serve to train astronauts. They can serve to train some of the systems that might be relevant for a kind of research. It's a complementary thing, not, I would say, critical to a lot of the research discussion that we just had. I just wanted to make that clear a little bit. We chose, as Protoplane, to look into analogs based on about 9+ years of experience coming from the planetary science, astrobiology side of things, and we found a overlap with the human spaceflight people who are interested to look at the effect of these high altitude environments on the human body. So from that aspect, when we look at the psychological and the physiological response on the humans, that is one aspect where we are developing campaigns to train not just, and when we say crew members, we don't talk about only potential astronauts, but also the ground crew, the people who are, for example, building those experiments which are going to be operated by astronauts. Even their training is important. So these analog environments help us create those simulated, you can say, campaigns wherein you can simulate, rather than having the human doing the experiment in space, that person is doing it in this remote, isolated, extreme environment condition. And within that purview, you can then test out the instruments, the experiment, hardware, software, the operations, the communications, and at the same time monitor what is happening to the operator, the user, or the actual experimenter in that environment. So that is just a context of how I would say analog fits into this discussion.
Yeah, thank you. And coming back to the pharma sector, Narayanan sir, the question to you is, I mean, as you are aware, the big pharma companies are into blockbuster drug discoveries, and I mean, every year we find some drug coming out, and mostly they are into the chronic disease aspect now, and the geriatric disease aspect. So in our country, I mean, the requirement is for the infectious disease, we require new antibiotics. So Vocard was a success story. They recently came up with nafithromycin, which is going to cure the community acquired pneumonia. And the total investment which went into it was around 500 crores, that is around $58 million US. And the amount of funding the government gave was only 2% of the 500 crores. So, Dr. Narayanan, I mean, you might have the discussions and you might have seen the literature. These space experiments are extremely costly. So, how ready is the pharma industry to put into more money into a different sector?
So I think the Indian pharma industry has always been adventurous, right? Right from going from making $1 HIV tablet, which changed the way HIV was being treated across the world. I think the Indian pharma industry is always ready to take on new challenges. So from a cost perspective, so if you look at the way the drug development happens in India, multitude of factors which are required for the drug development are either in-house in the pharma industry or they are easily accessible in the ecosystem, right? So you would have, a lot of the work that Wokhard needed to do being done in-house, a lot of the clinical research being outsourced, and partners who are able to deliver in a timely manner on many of those aspects, right? India offers several advantages in terms of cost is one of them, right? But a patient population, which is a large patient population, especially for infectious diseases, right? If you take lifestyle diseases like diabetes, obesity, I think we are fast becoming the capital in those as well. So I don't think that there is a dearth of infrastructure, patients, which are required for doing this research. I think the bottleneck is about how we use our regulatory ecosystem to facilitate some of this research, how we use our financial ecosystem to facilitate some of this research. Like you mentioned rightly, a lot of that funding for naphthromycin came from the industry itself, very little from the government, which is quite different from what happens somewhere in the West, right? There's a significant component of funding that comes from sources outside of the organization themselves in some ways. The idea itself may have come up with a startup or a small biotech taken up by the pharma industry and then developed. So the initial seed funding for the idea and for it to reach a certain stage would have come from the government. So which is what a lot of the Indian, I would say, granting agencies also try to provide, right? So you have the likes of DBT, BIRAC, the Department of Pharmaceuticals coming up with schemes which are going to fund some of these things. I think those funds need to increase. And when you talk about doing some of these research in space, I think not only the funding, but also a funding which is cross-border, right? It cannot be a DBT funding for pharmaceutical research in space. It has to be a joint project between a DBT and an ISRO to fund something like this, so that it can bring together scientists like Rahul, like Siddharth, and pharmaceutical industry together to actually make that a reality. Otherwise, we are working in silos. The pharma does very well in its generic silo. Space research is doing very well in its generic silo, right? But if you really need to make an impact, you need to start bringing these groups together. And platforms like this, I think, are very ideal platform. We need to have more of this, more discussion among the industry on both sides of the table, on the pharma side and on the space side, to actually see how we could mutually benefit from creating an ecosystem of pharmaceutical research in space, which will actually benefit the country.
Yeah, rightly said, Dr. Narayanan. And we are actually working very closely with ISRO, and we'll be doing joint activities. We'll be roping in the industry also in the second phase. We are looking at a few experiments in the first phase, especially with academia, and then we are trying to garner some support from the industry, from the startups also. And thank you so much. And coming back to Rahul, like for any startup to survive, you require to develop some technologies now. And I mean, what you are envisaging, what are the goals of RSAT, and are you getting into any technology development?
Yes, sir. Like RSAT has already satellite technologies that using microfluidic systems and lab on chip. We have designed modules, experiment modules, which is temperature controlled and carbon dioxide, oxygen supplies, pH level measuring, and sensors to measure the various characteristics of any bacteria or cells that we are taking to space. And we'll be we have our current dashboards where whatever happening in the space, we'll have a real-time monitoring to the customers, like whoever sending the samples. That technology that we have already have, but we want to also expand ourselves, particularly designing one small device where it will extensively work for protein crystallization, it will extensively work for stem cell research, it will extensively work for carrying cancer cells or organoids in space, or to generate a stem cells or large organoids in space, because 3D organoids have very good market even in pharmaceutical industries or biotech industries where they are sourcing it from different other parts. So we are also developing a small device working on that towards with the researchers that how technically we can develop that device. And majorly like now in India, like as industry is nurturing, the ground study or the research is very less, like some professors or some institute is working on their passion. But as now, as a part of Bio-E3 policy or the collaboration between DPT and ISRO, people started thinking about space to be added in their domain. And to also support to them, we have a clinostat or a RPM mission which is developed in-house by ResearchSat and RSAT, where it will be provided or given accessible like as a product. We are selling it to universities to do their ground study, come up with the ideas that what exactly they want to do in space or what exactly they are going to perform in space. We are working on that clinostat that will be out in the market soon.
So this is made by your own technical team? No?
This is made by our own ResearchSat, and we are having IP of it.
So maybe you can try to catch up with Dr. Arvind Ramanathan in our own institute, DBT in STEM. So he also, he also came up with the idea for a small clinostat. No?
Like I know Arvind sir, but he haven't mentioned about any clinostat. He told he's going to some institute.
I think he has already demonstrated it.
Yeah. Basically, only access we have is Air Force in Indian Air Force Institute. They have some human rotatory or centrifugal machine, or else usually they use
it's a small one only. I saw the equipment, it's a very small one.
And they use either they'll take it with fighter aircraft for a few seconds. They'll perform microgravity experiments.
Yeah. See, other thing Dr. Pandey was mentioning, they have started a course of astrobiology in MIT University, and we had a discussion during a pre-discussion among the panelists about how education has to be leveraged in our country. The question goes to George. This sector has a lot of interdisciplinarity. Can you tell us what strategy should we take forward? How to educate the PhD students? How to educate the undergrads who are really, they're very excited about this new area?
So the first thing I think I would continue to emphasize is that when we talk about microgravity research, it's chemistry, it's physics, it's biology, and I think really all the universities that are doing advanced work in these areas need to put a chapter on microgravity in their textbooks, just like they talk about other types of experimental capabilities. It's not a space industry thing only. Just like you have people who specialize in building skyscrapers, but you don't have, we don't talk about the skyscraper industry having to, build labs, or being a separate thing. When you need a lab, you call the right guy to go build it. So the space industry folks, we need to be ready and accessible to build the facilities that the other industries need to be successful. But those industries do what they do, and they need to understand that this is just another capability that they can tap into. So that's the first sort of mentality shift that I think needs to be established there, and I think that is really where the state institutions come in and say, hey, do your curriculum adequately cover all of the technologies and things that are out there? AI, for example, we talked about, is a fantastic technology, and there are certain computer science departments that specialize in the development of AI technology. But AI doesn't get just used by the computer science department, it gets used by all departments and all domains. This is the same thing. Space is a capability that everybody needs to be using. So that's first, mentality. Second is, I would say, clusters. So if you look at any really successful new technology, there's a cluster of people who interact and often are co-located. Silicon Valley is the most famous one.
Triple helix has been a big success story, triple helix model.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the second thing I would say in terms of focusing attention is make sure the right people are getting together and forming those clusters, because there is a certain degree of expertise. But then the other thing I would mention is there are a lot of accelerator activities in the space industry right now, again, for telecoms, geospatial, and remote sensing. We probably need to put together some accelerator type institutions, which not necessarily just from the space industry, that will focus on this. And I'll give an example. Just, the United States obviously has a long history of doing microgravity development. It was only this year that we formed our first accelerator in the United States. So it's called Orbital Edge. And it's kind of spun out of the ISS R&D institutions, which by and large in the United States are considered not as successful as we would like. So now the venture capital community is starting to engage and say, how can we step up to form the right investor expertise to support this? And I'll just mention, they have put together a $500,000 funding award to whoever comes through at the top of the class in the accelerator and a free flight to ISS. So how can we build similar kinds of things here that will give the jump start to some of these technologies? I will mention, I am an advisor to a company here in India called Catalyx. They are building the platform hardware and the reentry capsule hardware to be able to support this. I'll emphasize again, there are a few other companies around the world, but nobody has a lead at the moment. The leads are measured in months, not in years. And so I think this is a really interesting opportunity if people organize their investments correctly, state investments, research investments, venture capital investments, that there's a real opportunity to jump to the forefront and be a leader in this area.
One follow-up question, George, and are there any like dedicated PhD programs being funded by like NIH in the space biology sector? No?
Sorry, dedicated?
The PhD doctoral programs. No?
I believe there are a number of institutions, I mean, PhD programs, by nature, each PhD is slightly specialized, right? You don't have to be an aerospace engineer to do microgravity research. In fact, you really want to be coming from a discipline that you're solving a particular problem and happen to be using microgravity as a way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I have seen in US a person with like background in mathematics, he becomes a chair of the chemistry department and vice versa. From mathematics becomes a biology chair, a lot of interdisciplinarity. And coming back to Dr. Pandey, like in the deeps, I mean, like you have, in your website, you speak about the astrobiology part. I mean, what are the goals of your organization in the astrobiology space? So are you venturing into finding life beyond the solar system? What are the goals, Pandeyji? As a futuristic question. Right?
Thank you so much, sir. We are hoping to enable the community in India. It's been an effort since the last 8 years now. I think we've probably taken a little bit of a lead ahead of the microgravity community in the country. Like in 2016, we brought together earth scientists, prebiotic chemists, pre-Cambrian paleobiologists, people from so many diverse environments who suddenly realized that they can all actually help us find where life originated on our planet. We visited some great hot spring sites in Ladakh that had similarities to potential ancient hot springs that might have existed on Mars. And we were looking at how microbes survive, how does geochemistry create biology in these kind of environments. So there are several success stories in terms of collaborations that came out of these initial kind of getting-togethers. And we still do not have a dedicated astrobiology national program in the country. I hope we have one soon. It's mostly been a very informal community of people coming together, and we have continued to contribute to space science roadmap meetings at ISRO. We've contributed to reports where we provided inputs in terms of what kind of experiments should be flying to future Mars missions. But the problem here is we are treated in the same light as maybe the astrophysics or astronomy community, which has been around for decades. And as a scientific community, you need to give some time for, you can say, new converts into this field to help establish their labs, get the research going, to help them evolve their ideas into experiments. And that 0 to 1 phase is where, as Protoplanet, we are focusing on right now. We feel that some labs are very well established. They're at the brink of making that instrument or that experiment that will fly. But in most cases, it's really working with very well-established labs that are doing biotechnology, that are doing geochemistry work, that are doing microbiology work, helping them understand the problems, and then organically have them come into the community and then start doing astrobiology work, which is, just for the audience, the search for signs of life in the universe. So the immediate asks are of us to have these targeted workshops within the country. What ends up happening is that there are these immediate announcement of opportunities that go out, and many a times they're not in the public. They really go out to individual scientists that get invited into helping develop an instrument, which is fine. It works to a certain level. But if you're trying to do something nationwide for a community, you really have to find ways to get these people together, do those targeted workshops, build those plans. So that's an effort which has always been challenging, because any new field that you're trying to introduce into a research group or a university, it's hard because there's academic load, there's other research grants that they're already engaged with. So you're trying to fit into that 1 hour in the week that academic or a researcher has, and then have them talk about this. So it's a challenge, just to cut the long story short. But what we are doing from our side is, what the learning has been in the astrobiology community is that it took a while, but also with ISRO formally using words like analogs and astrobiology in their space policy that came out in January 2023, it actually put that formal acknowledgement that these are fields that are going to be seriously looked at. And then that led to a lot of researchers coming out of the closet in a way and saying that, by the way, we have been doing astrobiology work for a while, even though we were applying for biotech grants or earth science grants. Now we are openly asking for it. And then in Respond program as well with ISRO, they've started putting out some calls for these areas. So it has taken a lot of things to come. It's a matter of time also that has taken for this whole community to kind of come together in the astrobiology side of things.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pandey. One final question to George. Like, how do you, what is the future you see in the next 50 years now? So would we be able to crack the interstellar travel? Can we go travel beyond the solar system now, maybe in the 50 years or next 100 years now?
Yeah, so thinking far out, I think that human spaceflight obviously is one component of this, and humans don't react very well to the harsh environment of space. It's not the vacuum. We can protect ourselves from that.
There was an article recently, Voyager has actually crossed the interstellar space, and it has found a fireball, which is probably 9,000 Kelvin, I think, the temperature. So there is a barrier over there in the interstellar space. There are several unknowns now.
So the effect of microgravity on the human body is now well established because of the 40 or 50 years or so we had of human spaceflight. But the mitigations of that we're still learning to. The good news is that for up to about 30 days, the effects are quite temporary and easy to manage. So for space travel and tourism to low Earth orbit or even to the moon, we're not too worried. For long duration spaceflight, going to Mars, long duration on the moon, there's still a lot of difficult unknowns and difficult mitigations. The good news is that a lot of the work that's being done in space to figure out how to mitigate those issues, whether it's your eyes, the blood distribution, the effect on bone density, is actually teaching us a lot about how to solve problems on Earth with osteoporosis, with cataracts, and so on and so forth. So all of the research money we're going into figuring out how to have humans survive in space is actually benefiting life here on Earth. So that's the first good thing. The other thing I think that's really interesting, though, is that we sometimes think of gravity as it's either 0 or 1. But actually, this is a very unique earthly perspective. Gravity in the space environment can go from microgravity, which is very minute amount of gravity, to variable amounts up to 1g, and way beyond 1g if we start talking about going out to the other planets. The gravity field around of Jupiter and Saturn is significant. And then there's other factors like pressures that we have to deal with. So on Mars, we have an atmosphere, but it's a very low pressure atmosphere. So how do you adapt spacesuits, which we're used to making spacesuits that are operated in a 0G environment or and zero pressure environment? Now you're on Mars, you have pressure and other contaminants that are different. So the challenges that we face as we move out are various but exciting. And I think that every challenge that we conquer along the way is going to teach us more about how to make humanity a better species and how to take care of our environment here on Earth even better.
Thank you, George. If we have time, we can take a couple of questions from the audience.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting discussion. From Dr. Narayanan, I could guess that government needs to do more when it comes to the pharma industry. But my question is, what about the Indian touch to it, because Ayurveda is another domain. Is government planning to do something about that part, research into that?
Which
in
part,
the
sir? I
micro?
didn't get you.
Pardon?
Ayurveda.
Yeah.
I'm not competent to answer that question, sir. I mean, our domain is biotechnology.
No, you know, when
I
it
think
comes
Ayush,
to
we have a dedicated ministry called
biotechnology does not exclude Ayurveda.
No, we have a MOU with
It's an Indian system, and maybe a subset of it. I agree that our focus has been more on the other things because that happens in the rest of the world. But we, from the Indian government side, should also try to work on that.
I think Ayush Ministry is dedicated.
Apart from yoga, of course.
No, sir. Ayush is actually, very dedicatedly
No,
working.
Ayush, I'm not talking only from Ayush or the Ministry of Health perspective. Because when we talk about biotechnology, it encompasses everything. It doesn't necessarily mean Ayush or, Department of Health as separate entities. So there has to be an integrated approach where even yoga could be a part of it. There have been some experiments, but limited. Yep. But there is a scope for lot.
I want to jump in on this one because I think this is, as India is becoming a stronger and stronger spacefaring nation, the two things that I'm constantly surprised about is how much benefit there is to international collaboration. And how much culture has an influence on everything we do, including scientific research, the perspective that you bring to it. So I actually think this is actually an important point. And I would use it as a point to encourage, when India thinks about its investments going forward, how do you invest in a way that allows India to be influential and engaged with the international community? Because everybody's viewpoint is actually adding, I'll call it new perspective, new ways of thinking, and challenge people to be inspired to think about something a little bit differently, and that's where the innovation occurs. So I happen to have a space station background, and we're going to build new space stations in the future. There will potentially be multiple space stations, but I do hope that one of the outcomes is that we end up with at least one place in low Earth orbit and eventually on the moon that is a village, that is a global village, because the interactions economically, culturally, and scientifically hugely benefit by having that global community interacting together in one physical place.
Just to add to your point, sir, I think there's a lot of research happening on agriculture in space, right? And especially looking at medicinal plants. I think that's where the focus, your question is going towards that. How does the government encourage something like that? I think that's something that needs to be worked on. Definitely looking at metabolites coming from organisms, which could potentially be treatments for various diseases, increasing certain concentrations of certain metabolites or byproducts or chemicals in the plants themselves, which have high value. Those can be looked at as research projects. We know that there is change in the metabolite profile when you go to Antarctica. If you look at organisms in Antarctica, they produce a very different kind of metabolite profile. If you go to some of the deep sea organisms, they produce a very different metabolite profile. The same is true when you work with microgravity or with organisms in space. So looking at some of these aspects, not only from Ayurveda perspective, but from a holistic perspective of producing new drugs or agents which could benefit humankind, I think is very, very important.
Good afternoon, sir. This is Manish from Honest Cryogenics. So I'm totally from a non-medical background. Just please correct me if there is any mistake. So since we know that the microgravity research enables in a better drug treatments and better drug researchers and any new treatments, so if we consider the COVID-19 outbreak or else any autoimmune diseases or else any like cancer-like treatments, so is it possible to discover any affordable drugs through space pharma?
I would say the answer is definitely a yes, right? If you look at the way some of the cell systems grow in space, there is an accelerated growth of certain cancers. So definitely you will be able to do some of the research much faster. You can look at animal experiments being done in space, which is already being done, which can accelerate the time. So for osteoporosis, for example, if you were to do the model on Earth, you're looking at a 12-month duration for the animal to develop that kind of osteoporosis. But if you do this in space, probably you're doing it in 1 month. So you're saving the time. So it's not only the time saving that happens, but a cost saving that happens. So if you can reduce the cost of drug development from the current 2.6 or $3 billion that is being touted as a number to a few $100 million by doing that research in space, automatically you will start making it much more affordable to the masses. So I'm quite confident that in the next 10 years we will see a radical change in how drug discovery is done on Earth using what is being done in space.
Siddharth, you have mentioned that there is R&D going in the astrobiology sector in the Protoplanet as well. So can Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance and Protoplanet collaborate together to get the better results faster out for India?
Yes, we are mainly yes, answer is yes again. We are mainly focusing to find ways in which we can integrate microgravity as fast as possible into pharma and other sectors that are relevant. We are actually discussing probably holding events that are dedicated for this in collaboration with the government. So as Protoplanet, we are playing the role as a coordinator facilitator. I'd like to in fact call out discussions with SIA-INDIA as well. We've actually firstly very grateful. They gave us Protoplanet an opportunity to introduce ourselves to the community, and we will be working together to run certain events that could be either open events where new people can come in, and otherwise closed discussions, which are also very crucial at this phase. So definitely I think right now that 0 to 1 phase is where we need to work very fast on, because definitely like companies like what Rahul mentioned, the technology is there, it is already available, but if you don't start engaging with and understanding what the immediate requirements are, it becomes very difficult to then talk about how that technology can be integrated. So that's a space where Protoplanet will be planning to hold some targeted workshops and events, and you'll be hearing more about it soon.
Yeah, George wanted to make a comment on the pharma aspect.
Well, I just absolutely the number of elements he mentioned, and I had a whole list of conventions here, but I think the other thing I wanted to comment on here is that the microgravity research community in the rest of the world is really quite open, and there is a huge amount of work that's been done and cataloged, but there's an opportunity for someone to shift through that research and to pull out the nuggets of opportunity, and then to put together collaboration proposals. I think that my sense is that there is a willingness, a desire amongst senior leaders in countries here in India, and then all the countries that India is interacting with on a very friendly basis, mine included, but including others, to find opportunities to work together. And so I think the challenge I'll throw out to you is to say, don't hesitate, don't wait. If there's no funding, if there's no institution or whatever, step forward and tell us what is needed. Because people are out there looking and saying, Axiom 4 has the Indian astronaut mission on it. Why? Because someone was willing to step forward and mention that in the 2+2 dialogue between the United States and India, that maybe an Indian astronaut could fly to the ISS. And someone said, yeah, I like that idea. Let's put it on the agenda. And all of a sudden, it could happen. People had been talking about this for years. But until somebody had the courage to step forward and say, we could do this, and now there's a whole flurry of follow-on opportunities and understanding and collaboration between our two countries, including commercial space stations in the United States talking about using Gaganyaan for resupply missions. So step forward, tell us what you see as an opportunity, get your leaders to understand what those things are, and build the collaboration mechanisms between the various countries that are needed. The information, the data, there's research institutions in the United States that are looking for people who will say, I want to know what's happened and where the nuggets are and what I could persuade my funding sources to look at. They're waiting for you.
Thank you so much to all our panelists for that truly insightful and meaningful conversation. As a token of gratitude and appreciation, we now present the mementos to our eminent panelists. So may I request our moderator, Dr. Vamsi Krishna, to present the mementos to our panelists. First over Shridhar Narayanan. To Dr. Siddharth Pandey. To Mr. Rahul Shetty. And to Mr. George Weinman. Thank you, sir. So may I now request Rajiv Gandhi, Deputy Director General, SIA-INDIA, to please present the mementos to our session moderator. So we'll end with this session, and thank you. Yeah, sure, sir, please.
Thanks to all of you for being with us with a session which is not directly connected with space in so many ways, but we are trying to engage with all of you across multiple sectors because space brings benefits to multiple sectors. It would be gratifying for me to see these conversations move out of space industry and to the other industries. So please, I am requesting help from all of you to help us take these conversations into the pharma conferences, into semiconductor conferences, into other conferences where we can bring these benefits to her. And that request is individually and collectively to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. So as we break for the lunch, so lunch is being served for Inspire and Desire Hall, near Deck area. We will resume at next session at 2 p.m.